He doesn't know exactly when he lost you. There was no fight, no drama. But something changed and he felt it. Suddenly you didn't respond the same way. You no longer reacted like before. You didn't explain anything, yet he began to wonder if he still has you. That's what happens when a man senses that you're no longer watching him, no longer waiting, and that this time it's not a game. It's real. That's when logic no longer applies. His instinct kicks in. And what his instinct screams is, I'm losing her and I don't know why. That's why he acts differently. That's why he shows up out of nowhere. That's why he looks for ways to be seen again, even though he didn't see you before. Because real detachment, the kind you don't announce but is felt, forces him to react. And today you're going to understand exactly why he does that and how you can hold on to that new power without ever giving it away again. The very moment he senses that something in you has changed, even if you don't say a word, you didn't tell him, didn't cause a scene, didn't block him, didn't say, this is the end. And yet he felt it. He felt that something had shifted. That energy that used to reach out to him, that was present in every message, every gesture, every thought, was no longer there. And even if you don't know how, even if you can't explain it either, his body noticed, his instinct recognized it, and an alarm went off inside him. That feeling you had when you stopped needing him, that painful peace that washed over you when you said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to keep exhausting myself. I won't keep trying to convince someone that I'm worthy. That silent surrender you never voiced, but your energy field broadcasted with complete clarity. That's what touched him more than any speech ever could. Because real detachment isn't announced. It isn't explained. It isn't posted online. It's felt. And when a woman truly feels it, the soul of that man picks it up. It's an absence that hurts. Carl Jung said, what we don't make conscious manifests as fate. And when you consciously decide that you're no longer available for the same old thing, when you choose yourself without needing to prove it in words, your energy changes. And when your energy changes, he feels it as an invisible break he can't explain. But that deeply unsettles him, because before, you were there, sometimes doubting, sometimes insecure, sometimes conflicted. But your energy was still looking at him, still naming him, still waiting for him. And now it's not. Now there's a void, a different kind of silence. Not the silence of anger, but the silence of someone who no longer needs a response. And right there, right in that moment, his instinct goes on high alert. And not because of love, not necessarily from awareness, but as a reaction. Because the masculine instinct, when it's not mature, links your presence to validation and your detachment to loss of control. Not loss of control over you, but over what he thought he had secured with you. And that throws him off balance. Because when a woman pulls away with drama, he defends himself. But when a woman pulls away in peace, he gets uneasy, because then he can't argue, can't blame, can't manipulate. He can only feel what he didn't want to face before, that you were the one holding their relationship together, and he was just leaning on you. And now there's nothing left to lean on. And you might think he hasn't noticed, but yes, he has. He notices in the small things, the message that never came, the reaction you no longer give, the interest you stop taking for granted, the way your voice sounds calmer, the different light in your eyes, that silence that no longer asks about him or the two of you. And now listen closely, because this is what no one tells you. When he feels your true detachment, his mind interprets it as absence, but his body feels it as a threat. And that's when his instinct is activated, not his love. If he hasn't done the inner work, it's not love, it's need. It's desire to regain control. It's the urge to confirm he can still have you. And that's why he suddenly reappears, seeks you out, messages you, shows up like nothing ever happened. Not because he understood, but because he lost control over what you meant to him, and he wants it back. Not to love you better, but to feel that he still can. Because when you wanted him, he felt good enough without doing anything. But when you let go, he realized that the attention he got wasn't because of his worth. It came from your persistence. And now that you're no longer there, he's left with who he truly is. and that confronts him. And here's the deepest truth in all of this. When a woman detaches from a place of awareness, she becomes unreachable to the ego and irresistible to the soul, because she no longer emits the energy of, "Come, I need you." Now she radiates the frequency of, "I've come back to myself." And for a man disconnected from himself, that's a magnetic force he can't control, because there's no anxiety anymore, no pleading, no emotional chasing. There's only a woman who chose herself, who held her ground, who let go, and who is no longer waiting for anything. And he, though he may never say it, feels it. And that's why he comes back. Not always with words. Sometimes he just shows up. Sometimes he reacts to something of yours. Sometimes he dreams of you. Or he simply feels disturbed by your silence. Because now his instinct knows you're no longer where he left you. And that changes everything. Pay close attention now, because you're about to understand why his reaction isn't rational or conscious, and how your silent detachment triggers a biological response that drives him to seek you out without knowing why. Why isn't his reaction rational, and why can't he control it? I want you to hear this clearly, because it will change how you understand him forever. When a man reacts to your detachment, it's not because he had some sudden epiphany. It's not because he sat down and thought through all the ways he failed you. It's not because he analyzed the relationship and concluded that he misses you. It's because his body felt it, and his instinct kicked in. And that instinct, even if he thinks he's got it under control, follows a logic that's very different from yours. Carl Jung explained that the unconscious is much closer to the body than to the mind. And when a man has been emotionally supported by your presence, your attention, your energy, but never acknowledged it. When you walk away from a place of true detachment, he doesn't feel your absence as, "She doesn't love me anymore." He feels it as a threat, and his reaction is like someone who, without knowing how, starts to lose access to something that stabilized him without him even realizing it. That's why his reaction isn't linear. One day he shows up, the next he hides. He texts you but contradicts himself. He shows up but doesn't open up, because he's not acting from his adult mind, but from his survival system. And this is where you need to look closely, because if you interpret his reaction as a clear sign of love, you might reconnect based on an illusion. But if you see it for what it really is, an instinctive response triggered by your emotional detachment, then you can stay rooted in your center and not fall into the same old pattern. Let me make it clear, it's not love that brings him back. It's the void your energy left. And because he never learned to hold that emptiness on his own, now he's moving from discomfort, not awareness. And that movement is pure instinct, animal, biological, not romantic. Now I'm going to tell you something real. Camille, 38, told me, "After months of emotionally chasing him, I let go. I stopped texting. I stopped reacting to his stories. I stopped thinking about him all day. I came back to myself. And just when I was finally feeling at peace, he showed up like nothing happened. He sent me a silly message just to see if I was still there." Do you know why he did that? Because his mind didn't plan it. His soul didn't process it. It was his instinct needing to verify whether he could still access your energy. And when a man does that, it's not because he finally understood what he lost. It's because his reward system went into crisis. And here comes a brutal truth. The male ego often doesn't react when you love him. It reacts when you no longer need him. Because when you need him, he feels safe, validated, secure. But when you stop looking for him, when you no longer applaud him, wait for him, or translate his emotional incoherence, his inner world starts to shake. And that's when the activation happens. Not from the heart, but from imbalance. Because his system interprets your detachment as a loss of power. And the male ego, when it feels displaced, doesn't seek love. It seeks to regain a sense of control. And that's why many times he comes back just to make sure he can still provoke a reaction in you. Not because he's ready to love you better, but because he can't stand the idea of being replaced by your peace. And yes, this can hurt, I know. But if you don't see it clearly, you'll fall back in. And if you fall back in, you repeat the connection. But this time, from your own energetic self-betrayal. That's why I'm telling you plainly, his reaction is not a sign of change. It's a sign that your energy field is no longer available, and his ego resents it. His body starts to fire off signals, anxiety, obsessive thoughts, a sudden urge to hear from you, even dreams about you. Not because he wants to rebuild the bond, but because your silence and absence are forcing him to face his own lack. And for a man who hasn't done the inner work, that is unbearable. So he reappears, searches for something, sends a message, stirs up a memory, reacts to something of yours, but he's not doing it from clarity. He's acting out of a biological reflex, someone who can't bear having lost something he once thought was guaranteed. And here comes the most important thing you need to remember. When he comes back, because your detachment activated him, you don't owe him anything. You don't owe him an explanation. You don't owe him space. You don't owe him access to your peace. Because if he's returning from instinct, but you are already in a place of consciousness, that bridge is no longer compatible. And your only task now is not to become the woman he once took for granted. Just because now, driven by emptiness, he's trying to confirm that he still can. Stay with me, because in the next key, I'll reveal what happens when your energy is no longer available, and how that emptiness pushes him to seek you without even knowing why. But you can hold your ground without betraying your new center. When your energy is no longer available, he starts searching without knowing why. There's a type of search that doesn't come from love or conscious decision, but from a discomfort that won't let him rest. And it starts when your energy is no longer accessible to him. Not because you blocked him, not because you coldly ignored him, not because you faked indifference, but because from the inside you truly let go. You no longer wait for him. You no longer analyze him. You no longer dream of him. You no longer vibrate from "I hope he comes back." You vibrate from "finally, I've come back to myself." And that, though it's not visible, is felt. It's sensed in your field. It's projected in your vibration. And most importantly, it's reflected in his behavior, even if he doesn't understand it. Carl Jung said that the unconscious not only projects what we carry inside, it also reacts to what the other person no longer reflects of us. And when a man derived his sense of worth from your presence, when his unconscious sense of security rested on your emotional consistency, and suddenly you're no longer energetically present, even if you still exist physically, he starts to unravel. And that's when he starts to search. Not because he chose you from awareness, but because the void your energy left became unbearable. And since his ego can't say, "I lost her because I didn't know how to hold her," what it does is something more primitive. It starts seeking out what used to soothe him: your attention, your gaze, your response, your validation, your energetic presence. And since he can no longer find it, he starts looking for you. Not you, the person, but the feeling of himself that he used to have when you looked at him. That's what he misses. That's what he doesn't know how to recover. It's not that he misses you yet. It's that he can't stand how he feels without you. Do you realize how brutal that is? He's not moving from the heart. He's moving because he lost access to the version of himself that you held up. And this is where many women return, because they think that sudden message, that "how are you," that emoji, that reaction to a story, is a sign that everything has changed. But no, it's just the reflex of an emotional system trying to reconnect with what used to regulate his ego. And if you don't see that, if you let yourself get carried away by the emotion of being noticed again, you could step back into a relationship where there's no longer any energetic compatibility. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. Valerie, 36, told me, "After so much letting go, I finally managed to stop thinking about him. No anger, no sadness, just neutrality. And right then, he came back as if he knew. He messaged me saying he had a dream about me, that he felt like something had broken, and inside I trembled. When I asked her what she felt, she said, "I feel like he doesn't miss me. He misses how he felt being with me." And she was right. Because when you detach from a place of awareness, when you stop emitting that frequency of "I'm here so you can validate me," you stop feeding his ego and you start activating his emptiness. And he can't tolerate that emptiness. So he comes back, he peeks in, He makes inconsistent moves. He tries to get you to react. And if you don't, he escalates. Because now his energy has nothing to hold on to. And for an immature ego, that's unsustainable. Here comes the deeper revelation of this key. When a man starts looking for you without understanding why, it's because your energy stopped looking for him. And now he feels emotionally exposed. And that's where your power lies. Not in how you make him react, but in how you walk away without resentment. So how do you become space without getting trapped in his shadow? Because when you stop projecting expectation, emotional dependence, or the need to belong, your vibration becomes neutral, clean, powerful. And that can't be ignored. It can't be forgotten. It can't be replaced. That's why his emotional system starts to stir, because it wants to recover something it doesn't even understand how it lost. And since he doesn't understand it, the only thing he can do is look for you. Maybe he texts, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just thinks about you. But something has already changed, and you know it, because this time you're not waiting. Now pay close attention, because I'm going to tell you exactly what a man does when your detachment disarms him, and how the 3 most common behaviors show up when your presence is no longer available, but he still can't let go of the invisible bond that ties him to you. The 3 most common behaviors of a man. When your detachment disarms him, when your energy truly pulls back, not out of pride or manipulation, but real detachment, his instinct doesn't stay still. And as you already know, it doesn't react from clarity, but from an internal discomfort that pushes him to act. To act without logic, without strategy, just to try to reconnect with what he can no longer control, your energy. And this is where many women fall again, because the moves he makes can look like affection, but in reality they're manifestations of a disarmed ego. Carl Jung spoke about the ego's reactive behavior when its source of validation is withdrawn. And that's exactly what happens when you are no longer emotionally available. These are the 3 most common behaviors that appear when your detachment shakes his inner sense of security. 1. He becomes erratically present. Suddenly he appears. He texts you. He sends an ambiguous message. He reacts to a story. Or he talks to you as if nothing ever happened. And if you're not grounded, you interpret it as, maybe he misses me, or maybe he realized what he lost. But no, what's really happening is this. He wants to check if he still has access. And he does it without real commitment, because he's not coming back from a place of transformation. He's coming back from a biological reflex that says, I want to make sure I still matter. 2. He drops hints to see if you react. This may seem casual, but it's not. He starts sharing things he knows will touch you. Phrases, memories, photos, signs that only you would recognize. Maybe he talks about something you experienced together. Maybe he posts a song you once shared. And all of it has one goal: to reactivate your field. Because if you react, if you start putting emotional energy toward him again, even if it's just to ask or confront, he'll feel like he's regained the control he lost. 3. He tries to make you jealous or show off his growth. This is one of the clearest and emptiest tactics. He starts leaving traces of his new life, apparently happy, focused, maybe even with someone else. But if you look closely, all of that shows up right after your emotional silence. Because what he's trying to do isn't show he's better off without you. He's trying to get your attention again. He doesn't want to live. He wants to provoke. Because when a man hasn't healed his ego, and you walk away, leaving him face to face with his own emptiness, the easiest thing isn't growth, it's compensation. And pretending he no longer needs you is his way of saying, are you looking at me? And now that you know these reactions, I want you to remember this. None of these responses are proof of love. They are signs of emotional instability. And if you're not clear, you could become part of a game you no longer resonate with. And if you go back in, it's not because of him, it's because of the fear you still haven't finished letting go of. So instead of asking, why is he doing this? Ask yourself, what is he doing this for? And from what place in me am I letting it affect me? Because the issue isn't what he does. The issue is how you choose to interpret it, from your wound or from your power. The most important thing is not whether he comes back. It's whether you, when that happens, are still grounded in yourself, or whether you give your energy away again. And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next key. How to hold your real detachment without closing off to love. How to keep your energy elevated and open without betraying yourself every time he gets triggered. Detachment that doesn't hurt, but transforms. How to hold your power without losing your openness. You've reached the most important part, because this isn't just about walking away. It's not about pretending you don't feel anything or turning into a cold, unreachable, distant woman. It's about learning how to stay with yourself without losing your capacity to love. It's about remaining open, but not available to just any kind of energy. Because many women, when they awaken and detach, they harden. They believe that in order not to fall again, they must shut down, stop feeling, suppress their desire, distrust everyone, play the same game that once broke them, but now from the opposite side. And that's not power, it's armor. It's fear disguised as empowerment. Carl Jung said that any energy we don't integrate becomes shadow. And if your detachment is born from resentment, from unhealed trauma or pain, it will eventually show up as rigidity, as judgment, as emotional blockage. And that doesn't just disconnect you from him, it disconnects you from yourself. That's why today I want to teach you the most valuable part of this process: how to hold your detachment in the light. Not from your wound, but from awareness. Not from pain, but from your soul. Not from reaction, but from clarity. Let me tell you plainly, when detachment comes from fear, it isolates you. When it comes from power, it transforms you. Let me share what happened to Adrienne, 42. She told me something I'll never forget. I went from begging him to ignoring him, and in both versions, I lost myself. Only when I stopped acting from him and started responding from me did I feel true freedom. That's what true detachment is. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you no longer need to cling in order to keep loving, because conscious love doesn't chase, doesn't demand, and doesn't panic. Conscious love offers, and if it's not welcomed, it withdraws in peace. Now I want to give you this: how to hold your detachment without hardening or closing yourself off to love. Don't force yourself to forget. Detachment isn't about erasing what you felt. It's about honoring it without letting it control your present. Keep feeling, but from your center. You can keep loving. You can keep desiring, but from an energy that doesn't beg or depend. From a steady presence that says, I feel, but I don't chase. Keep your channels open, but sacred. Don't respond on impulse. Don't react from fear. If you reconnect with him, or anyone, do it from the clarity of who you are now, not from the wound of who you were. Celebrate your new standard, not your coldness. It's not that you're hard now, it's that now you know your worth, and that's why you no longer resonate with someone who only wants to touch you, but not hold you. Here comes the final revelation of this process. The most powerful detachment is not the one that blocks, ignores, or avoids. It's the one that lets you keep walking in peace, even when what you loved is no longer with you. Because when you can keep feeling without falling into dependence, when you can move forward without going back out of habit, when you don't numb your heart, but you also don't let it rule you, then you've won, not over him, but over yourself. And that makes you a free woman. Not because you run from love, but because you no longer have to beg for it. And from that place, when someone shows up and truly sees you, you won't have to chase them, because your presence will be so clear, so calm, so radiant, that he'll know exactly what he's standing in front of. And if he doesn't, then he's simply not for you. Sometimes true self-love doesn't look like victory. It looks like silence, like an internal decision, like a clean goodbye, like a woman who stays with herself, even when her ego still wants to run back to him. And that is who you are now. It's not your silence that disarms him. It's the energy that no longer needs him to be at peace. It's not your absence that moves him. It's your real detachment, the kind that doesn't punish, but also doesn't grovel. Because when a woman stops chasing, she doesn't lose the bond. She loses the dependency. And that's when he, for the very first time, starts to see you as he never did before, from the truth of your power. Comment below, my detachment is not coldness, it's freedom. Declare it. And anchor this new energy in your field, and let it protect you from ever begging for what you now know you deserve. Because from this day forward, you'll no longer be the woman who waits for him to return. You'll be the woman who, by choosing peace over attachment, becomes the mirror of everything he still hasn't learned how to hold. And if he ever looks at you again, it will be with the certainty that he can no longer have you like before, because you are no longer the same. And if this message resonated with you, I invite you to leave a powerful like, subscribe, and be sure to activate the notification bell. But above all, don't leave just yet. There's so much more waiting for you. Dive into the other videos here on the channel and keep expanding your energy and your power. I'll see you in the next video.